The world was shrieking. At least, that's how it sounded to Mia Torres as the alarm wailed through the hangar, strobing red lights slicing through the midnight gloom. She felt the tremor of distant explosions under her boots. Something was burning, something close. Her hands were smeared with oil, her head still thudding from a caffeine crash, but the panic in her bones was electric and clear. All around her, the night shift crew was scattering, shouting orders, grabbing radios, sprinting for the bunkers. Over the klaxon's banshee howl, someone yelled, "Torres, what the hell are you doing? Get under cover." But she was already moving, ducking beneath the wing of the F-16 she'd been patching up all week. The air stank of scorched fuel and fear. Far across the tarmac, a jet was burning, its nose crumpled, a fountain of sparks lighting up the black sky. And that's when she saw him, a pilot crawling from the wreckage, helmet askew, one arm limp and useless. He collapsed just yards from the flames. "Damn it," Mia hissed, and before she could think she was running, straight across the open tarmac, past the stunned eyes of a dozen men who'd never once followed her lead. Someone tried to stop her, grabbing her sleeve as she darted past. "Torres, are you crazy? It's gonna blow." She shook free. Her boots pounded on concrete, adrenaline drowning out the racket. She could feel the heat growing, a dull monster's breath at her back. The pilot was mumbling, half-conscious. "Help," he whispered. Mia dropped to her knees, grabbed his good arm, and dragged with all the strength in her body. Her lungs burned. The world narrowed to one impossible task: pull him far enough, fast enough. Her own fear tasted like metal. 10 more feet. A flash, a wave of heat, a shockwave that nearly toppled her. The burning jet roared in protest, fire leaping higher, licking at the sky. Mia threw herself over the pilot, shielding him as debris rained down, tiny, searing pieces of death. All she could do was squeeze her eyes shut and pray. Then silence. Or not silence, but a sudden shift in the noise. The siren still howled, but the explosion was spent. The air was full of coughing and shouting, radios squawking, boots running toward her. A pair of medics rushed in, yanking the pilot onto a stretcher. "You with him, Torres?" One barked, but she was already up, backing away, hands shaking. That's when she heard the voice, sharp, unmistakable, cutting through the chaos like a blade. "Sergeant Torres." Colonel Anders stormed across the tarmac, his face red, his uniform immaculate even in the chaos. The entire crew seemed to shrink away, giving him space, casting furtive glances at Mia. "What the hell do you think you're doing out there?" Mia's breath caught in her throat. She tried to steady herself, stand straight. "Sir, there was a man down. I pulled him out before." "You disobeyed a direct order to stay put." Anders snapped, voice echoing off the hangar walls. "You endangered yourself and you endangered everyone else by running across a hot zone like a damned fool. Your job is to fix planes, not play hero." A ripple of uneasy laughter ran through the onlookers. Someone muttered, "Knew she'd pull something like this," just loud enough for her to hear. The rest said nothing, some staring at their boots, others looking everywhere but at her. Mia's cheeks burned, but she refused to look away. "Sir, if I hadn't gone, he would have died." "That's not your decision to make." Anders thundered, his face inches from hers now. "You're not trained for combat. You're a mechanic. We have protocols for a reason. Don't think because you can turn a wrench you can save the world." The world, Mia thought, is very small when you're standing in front of someone determined to put you in your place. Behind Anders, Sergeant Blake, always ready to sneer, crossed his arms and rolled his eyes. "Maybe next time she'll fix the engine instead of trying to be one," he called, and a few snickers followed. Colonel Anders's gaze never left her. "You want to be useful, Torres? Stay where you belong. Let the people trained to fight do the fighting." He gestured at the hangar, dismissive. "Get back to your tools." "That's an order." Mia stood frozen, the words heavy in her chest. She heard the medics hustling the pilot away, the crackle of radios, the click of boots as everyone returned to their stations, except for her. She stared at Anders, searching for something, respect, gratitude, even basic acknowledgement, but found nothing but contempt. As he turned away, the crowd dissolved. Blake gave her a look that was all smirk and no sympathy. "Should have listened, Torres. Heroes get medals. Mechanics get written up." Mia clenched her fists, oil and ash streaking her skin. She didn't trust herself to speak, so she didn't. Instead, she marched back to her bay, the echo of the colonel's words thundering in her head, louder than any alarm. "Your job is to fix planes, not play hero." By the time she reached her tool chest, her hands were trembling, heart still jackhammering in her chest. The scent of burning jet fuel hung thick in the air. She stared at her reflection in the polished metal, a smudge-faced, stubborn-eyed woman who didn't belong anywhere, apparently, except in the background. She tried to will away the sting behind her eyes. But the shame was a weight she couldn't lift, not yet. Not tonight. Behind her, the base returned to its battered routine. But nothing Mia realized would ever be routine again. Not after tonight. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to the channel. Morning came hard and bright, the desert sun already hammering at the corrugated metal roofs when Mia Torres trudged back into the hangar. She hadn't slept. Adrenaline and shame had kept her company through the long, sour hours. She kept replaying the colonel's words, trying to convince herself they didn't matter. But they did. Every sideways glance in the chow line, every half-whispered joke reminded her. "Look, if it isn't G.I. Jane," someone muttered as she passed. Mia said nothing. She forced her eyes on the checklist in her hand. F-60 number 042, fuel pump replacement, afterburner inspection, sensor calibration. She could do these blindfolded. She'd done them 100 times before. But that morning even her tools felt foreign. She fumbled a socket wrench, dropping it with a metallic clatter. Blake, only a few feet away, snorted. "Careful, Torres. Wouldn't want you to hurt yourself, again." She ignored him, but her face burned. She found herself double-checking every step, anxious not to give anyone a reason to criticize. Her stomach twisted with nerves she hated to admit. Just before noon, Chief Master Sergeant Reed strode into the bay, his clipboard a shield, his tone brisk. "Torres. New orders. You're prepping jets for tonight's flight, strike package, classified details. Make sure everything's perfect. Colonel's orders." There was a faint, mocking emphasis on the word perfect. Mia nodded, too tired to argue. She rolled up her sleeves and got to work, her focus narrowing. This, at least, she could control. She checked the hydraulics, replaced worn wires, ran diagnostics on the radar. Sweat soaked her shirt and stung her eyes, but she lost herself in the rhythm, letting her hands speak when words had failed. As she knelt beneath the fuselage, a shadow fell across her. Blake. He leaned against the wing, arms folded. "So, you get a slap on the wrist or a medal for yesterday?" Mia glared. "I got work to do, Blake." He smirked. "Yeah. Word is you only pulled that pilot out because you broke protocol. Risked the whole damn squad. Enders wants you gone. Watch your back, Torres." She bit down on her reply and kept working, feeling his eyes on her even after he walked away. By mid-afternoon, the air was heavy with jet fuel and resentment. Mia found herself alone, running diagnostics on a bird scheduled for a critical sortie. She noticed something off, an anomaly in the engine readings, a spike in temperature she'd never seen before. She checked the wiring harness. There, a wire that shouldn't be loose. Someone had left a fastening bolt undone. Mia frowned. She knew her work. She would never have left something like that. She rechecked her log from the previous day. She'd signed off on this jet herself, and her notation was clear. All bolts secured. Was it an accident or something else? She called over Chief Reed, voice steady despite her nerves. "Sir, there's a problem with this jet. Engine wiring wasn't properly secured. Could have caused a failure midair." Reed barely glanced at her. "Fix it. No time for stories." She hesitated. "It's the third loose wire I've found this week. I think." Reed cut her off, irritation crackling in his tone. "Torres, you're not here to speculate. Just fix the damn plane." Mia swallowed her protest. She tightened the bolt, logged the error, and made a mental note to check every jet herself, no matter how late it got. By the time the sun dipped behind the hangar, the crew was gathering for the pre-mission briefing. Mia, sweat-stained and exhausted, hovered at the edge of the crowd. Anders stood before the group, eyes scanning the room. "Tonight's operation is critical," he said. "I want no mistakes. Mechanics, your job is done. The rest of you, gear up." He looked straight at Mia, his expression cold. "And let's not have any unauthorized heroics." A few of the pilots laughed. Mia looked away, her face hot. She felt more alone than ever, trapped between wanting to prove herself and knowing everyone was waiting for her to screw up. After the briefing, her friend, Airman Riley, found her in the shadows of the flight line, gnawing at a protein bar, nerves jangling. "Hey." Riley's voice was gentle. "You okay?" Mia managed a thin smile. "Sure. Just thinking about taking up knitting instead." Riley gave a half-hearted laugh. "Don't let them get to you. What you did yesterday, most of them wouldn't have had the guts." "Doesn't matter," Mia said bitter. "I'm not supposed to have guts. I'm supposed to keep my head down and my mouth shut." Riley nudged her shoulder. "So what? You've never been good at that anyway." Mia snorted, the ache in her chest easing a fraction. But the worry remained. Later, as darkness fell and the base settled into uneasy quiet, Mia stayed behind, running one last inspection. She crawled under the F-16's wing, flashlight beam trembling in her tired hand. Every click of metal was a question. Was someone sabotaging these jets? Was someone trying to make her look incompetent? Suddenly she heard a metallic thunk behind her. She slid out and saw a tool left lying on the tarmac. One of hers, she was sure, but she hadn't left it there. Footsteps echoed across the concrete, but by the time she turned, the hangar was empty. Paranoia, she told herself. Just nerves. But as she gathered her tools, she spotted something glinting on the ground. A washer from the landing gear. She picked it up, frowning. 1 mistake is a fluke. 2 is suspicious. 3 is a warning. Mia packed up and locked the tool chest, her mind racing. She thought of going to Anders, but she could hear his voice in her head. You're not here to speculate. She thought of saying something to Chief Reed. But what would she say? That she felt something was wrong? That she didn't trust her own team? Instead, she slipped into the shadows, eyes sharp, heart pounding, a silent vow forming. No one was going to sabotage her work. Not tonight. Not ever. As she left the hangar, she paused, watching the distant runway lights flicker. The night felt heavy, taut with secrets. Mia had always been good at fixing broken things. But she had never felt so close to breaking herself. The night air pulsed with heat and nerves. Beyond the hangar doors, the airstrip shimmered under a cold flood of moonlight, but inside the base, the world had grown strangely quiet. Mia's shift had officially ended, but her mind refused to rest. She prowled the hangar alone, checking and rechecking every nut, every cable, every wire. A knot of unease twisted in her gut. Too many mistakes, too many near misses, all too close together. She was tightening a fuel line beneath F-16 number 045 when she heard it. A muffled clink, then a low murmur. Mia froze. The radio on her belt crackled, static then silence. Someone else was in the hangar. She clicked off her flashlight and pressed herself against the cold metal of the landing gear, listening. Another noise, a quick, metallic snap. Footsteps, soft and sure, moving with a purpose she didn't recognize. A chill crawled down her spine. She slipped out from under the jet, moving low, keeping to the shadows just as the base lights flickered, then died. In a heartbeat, everything was plunged into darkness. Panic fluttered in her chest. Overhead, emergency backup lights sputtered on, dim and weak. The hangar was an eerie landscape of shapes and shadows. From the far end, a door banged open. Voices, low, urgent, and unfamiliar. Not American accents. Not her crew. Something was terribly, terribly wrong. Mia's mind raced. She edged closer, heart hammering, and peered through a tangle of landing gear. Four figures in black moved swiftly, heads covered, rifles in hand. One hunched by a jet's underbelly, fiddling with something. Wires, timers, blinking lights. Bombs. She ducked back, bow rising in her throat. The base was under attack. The realization struck cold and hard. No one knew. The guards outside would be hit first. Command was across the runway, too far to hear. The hangar, her hangar, was ground zero. Her radio buzzed again, static, then a burst of panicked shouting. Shots fired, North Gate, repeat, base under. The transmission cut out. Mia stared at the tiny device, feeling both utterly alone and impossibly responsible. She forced herself to think. 4 hostiles, explosives, no backup. No weapon. Her mind leapt to the tool chest. Wrenches, crowbars, a flare gun she'd stashed for emergencies. A crash echoed across the tarmac. The enemy squad split up. 2 stayed, working at the jets, while the others moved toward the hangar door, probably to plant more charges or intercept anyone coming in. She could run. She could hide. But if she did, every jet in this bay, and every person sleeping in the barracks, would die. Mia's hands shook, but she gritted her teeth, the memory of Anders's words burning in her head. You're a mechanic. Not a hero. She stuffed her pockets with heavy wrenches, gripped the flare gun, and crept along the wall, counting her breaths. One of the saboteurs was kneeling at the landing gear, head bent. Mia inched closer, nerves sizzling. She hurled a wrench hard. It smashed into the back of his skull with a sickening crack. He slumped, silent. The other spun, raising his weapon. But Mia fired the flare gun, the blinding light streaking into his face. He staggered, blinded, shooting wild. Mia tackled him, teeth bared, and they crashed into the tool chest. She clawed at his rifle, metal biting into her hands, until she wrenched it free and slammed the stock into his jaw. He dropped out cold. Mia gasped, sweat running down her neck. The hangar was suddenly full of gunfire, shouts, panic, chaos. More shots outside. Somewhere, alarms finally began to scream. She snatched up the dropped rifle and peered through the hangar door. Two more hostiles. One firing at an unseen figure by the barracks, the other planting another charge at the next jet. Mia darted forward, every nerve screaming. She yanked the wires from the nearest bomb, heart pounding, barely remembering her EOD training. Red wire, then blue, then black. The timer blinked, then died. One down. The gunfire outside intensified. Mia heard an American voice, Blake's, shouting for help. Without thinking, she sprinted into the open, firing a burst over the saboteur's head. He dove for cover. Blake, blood pouring down his arm, scrambled behind a cart. He stared at Mia, wide-eyed, disbelieving. "Torres?" he gasped. "What the—" "Shut up and help me," she barked, tossing him the rifle. He caught it, still stunned, but managed to drag himself upright, aiming shakily at the enemy. Mia lunged for the final jet, finding the last explosive, her hands slick with sweat. The saboteur spotted her, charged. She braced herself, swinging a wrench as hard as she could. It connected, but not enough. He slammed her into the tarmac, hands at her throat, fury in his eyes. Stars burst behind Mia's eyelids. Desperate, she drove her knee into his gut, grabbed the flare gun and fired point blank. He screamed, rolling away. Mia staggered up, vision swimming, and tore the wires from the bomb just as the timer dropped to 2 seconds. The explosive powered down with a sick little whine. Mia sank to her knees, gasping for air, the world spinning. The chaos outside was fading. Sirens wailed, more voices now, American voices, sweeping the area. The remaining enemy fled into the night. Mia slumped against the battered jet, every muscle shaking, the taste of copper in her mouth. The hangar was a ruin, broken glass, scattered tools, the faint tang of burning. Blake limped to her side, awe and disbelief written across his bruised face. You saved the whole damn base," he said, voice raw. Mia looked at him, chest heaving. "Just did my job," she managed, voice cracking. But in her heart, she knew it wasn't true. She had done more than her job. She had chosen to fight. And nothing would ever be the same again. Mia's chest heaved as she stared at the saboteur crumpled at her feet. Blood thudded in her ears, mixing with the siren song of alarms and the distant pop of gunfire outside. But the hangar had gone eerily still, just the crackle of static on the radio and the wheeze of broken machinery. Every muscle screamed for rest, but the job wasn't finished. She stumbled upright, blinking sweat and grit from her eyes. She spotted Blake, pale, blood trickling from his arm, face ashen but alert, leaning against the battered tool chest. He jerked his chin toward the far end of the hangar, fear in his eyes. "There's one more," he rasped. He went for the control room. The words sliced through Mia's exhaustion. The control room, where the hangar's master switches and emergency overrides were kept. If the last saboteur got control, he could ignite the fuel lines, open the hangar doors, or trap everyone inside. She thought of the pilots sleeping in the barracks, the fuel tanks lined up like dominoes. If this enemy succeeded, the destruction would be total. A bolt of clarity shot through her. There was no one left but her. She took the rifle, checked the magazine with shaking hands, and slipped through the shadows toward the control room stairs. Every step echoed, but she moved lightly, just as her father had taught her on childhood camping trips. Heel, toe, breathe. She pressed herself against the wall, heart pounding, and peered into the cramped, windowless space. Inside, the last saboteur hunched over the control panel, muttering in a language Mia didn't know. His backpack lay open, wires snaking out toward the circuit box. He hadn't noticed her yet. She could see the glint of a detonator in his hand, thumb hovering over the trigger. Mia weighed her options. Rush him and risk a detonation? Wait and risk him finishing his work? She drew a slow, shuddering breath. She stepped inside, rifle raised, voice cold and clear. "Drop it. Now." The saboteur jerked upright, startled. He took her in, a woman grime-streaked and wild-eyed, holding a rifle like she meant it. He sneered, not lowering the detonator. Mia didn't flinch. "I'm not kidding. One move and you're done." He replied in clipped English, his voice mocking. "You won't shoot. Not in time." Mia's mind raced. She saw the bundle of wires, the blinking lights, the failsafes that could trigger if he simply let go. But she wasn't just a mechanic, she knew this panel. She could shut down the power, override the system if she could just reach the kill switch. She glanced past him, memorizing the layout. Main breaker on the far left, red emergency button below. If she could distract him for 3 seconds. She licked her lips, voice steady. You're done. My people are coming. He laughed. No one's coming. Only you. Mia took a careful step forward, rifle fixed on his heart. I'm enough. He pressed his thumb harder on the detonator, eyes narrowing. You think you're a hero? You're just in the wrong place. Something snapped inside her. No, she spat. I'm exactly where I need to be. She dove to the side, squeezing the trigger in a wild arc as she landed behind a battered locker. Bullets tore through the air. The saboteur fired back, a barrage of thunder. Sparks leapt from the control panel. The detonator clattered to the floor, rolling away. Mia scrambled, her hands and knees bloody on the metal grate. She reached for the detonator, but the saboteur kicked it aside, grabbing her by the hair and yanking her up. She twisted, slamming her elbow into his ribs. They grappled in the cramped space, the man's strength ferocious, but Mia refused to let go. Her training, her fear, her fury, everything she'd ever swallowed down, erupted. With a strangled scream, she slammed his head into the control panel. Lights flickered. He stumbled, dazed, and she shoved him back, diving for the main breaker. The saboteur lunged for her, fingers grazing her wrist, but she slammed the kill switch with her fist. The lights died. The detonator's signal was cut off. The base went dark and silent, only emergency lights flickering to life. The saboteur roared, swinging wildly. Mia ducked, grabbed the heavy red fire extinguisher from under the console, and brought it down on his shoulder. He crashed to the floor, groaning. Mia staggered back, breath ragged, vision swimming. She heard the pounding of boots. Finally, backup, rushing into the control room, rifles at the ready. Blake burst in, flanked by two MPs, eyes wide. Torres? You okay? Mia slumped against the wall, the extinguisher still clutched in her trembling hands. He was going to blow the fuel lines. He almost did. The MPs cuffed the saboteur, dragging him away. Mia barely heard their congratulations. Her head was spinning with what might have happened. The base, her friends, were safe but only by a margin of seconds. Her entire body shook with adrenaline and relief. Blake knelt beside her, awkward and sincere. You saved all of us. All of this. He swallowed, wiping blood from his forehead. I was wrong about you, Torres. She managed a weak, crooked smile. Yeah, I know. Colonel Anders arrived, breathless, eyes wide with shock. He stared at Mia, at the wreckage, at the subdued saboteur. For a long moment he said nothing. Finally he nodded just once. Sergeant Torres. Thank you. Mia pushed herself upright, every muscle aching. She faced her commanding officer, her crewmates, and the tangle of wrecked machinery. Her heart hammered with pride, exhaustion, and something new, something fierce. For the first time, nobody told her to step back or stand down. No one doubted that she belonged. They saw her as she was, not just a mechanic, not just a woman, but the hero they hadn't expected but desperately needed. Outside, the first hint of dawn glimmered on the horizon. Inside the hangar, in the stunned silence, Mia Torres finally felt seen. The hangar was quiet now, almost peaceful in the pale hush before sunrise. For the first time in hours there were no alarms, no gunshots, no desperate shouts, only the faint clatter of tools as emergency crews swept the damage, and the hum of generators bringing the base slowly back to life. Mia sat on the edge of her workbench, bandaged and battered, watching the world return to itself. She had never felt so exhausted, or so alive. Her hands shook as she sipped cold coffee, knuckles bruised and oil still smudged beneath her nails. The chaos of the night replayed in flashes. The heat, the fear, the roar of the flare gun, the sharp jolt as she slammed the kill switch. She felt every ache in her muscles, every scrape on her skin, but beneath the pain was something bigger, a trembling, golden pride. The medics had offered to check her over again, but Mia waved them off. She needed this moment to herself, to process what she'd done and who she'd become. The hangar that had always felt like a cage now felt different, like the heart of something she'd finally claimed as her own. A few feet away, Blake hovered uncertainly. His slinged arm was fresh from the medic's tent, but he looked more sheepish than wounded. He scratched at his chin, glancing her way, then back at the floor. He cleared his throat. So, about last night. Mia raised an eyebrow, waiting. Blake fidgeted. I've been a jerk. You know that. I honestly thought you were just looking for attention. But you saved my ass. Saved all of us. He forced himself to meet her eyes. I'm sorry. And thank you. The words were awkward but sincere. For a long moment, Mia didn't answer. She looked past Blake to the rest of the crew now bustling through the hangar, People who had always kept her at arm's length, but who now watched her with a new, unspoken respect. Finally she nodded. "You're welcome, Blake. Just, maybe next time trust me to do my job." He gave a crooked grin. "After last night, I'd trust you to land the plane." Before she could reply, Colonel Anders entered the hangar, his usual brisk stride softened by something almost like humility. The crew fell silent, watching as he crossed to Mia. "Sergeant Torres." His voice was steady but the hard edge was gone. "On behalf of this base, and the entire squadron, I want to thank you for your actions. You kept your head when others lost theirs. You saved American lives, protected critical assets, and prevented a disaster that would have cost us dearly." He paused, eyes searching her face. "We are submitting you for a commendation. It's the least we can do." Mia's throat tightened. For so long, all she'd wanted was to be seen, to be valued, not for her gender or for what she wasn't, but for what she could do. Now in this battered hangar she finally was. "Thank you, sir," she managed, voice hoarse. Anders hesitated, then added, "The test pilot program is reopening next month. Your name will be at the top of the list if you want it." Mia blinked, stunned. For a moment she didn't trust her own ears. She nodded, tears burning in her eyes. "Yes, sir. I do." As Anders turned to address the rest of the crew, applause broke out, awkward at first, then genuine, swelling until the whole hangar echoed with it. Mia felt her cheeks flush, her heart soaring and sore at the same time. The next days passed in a blur of interviews, after-action reports, and restless nights. Mia found herself the center of attention, her face known even to strangers passing through the base. She didn't crave the spotlight, but she understood now that her story was bigger than herself. One afternoon, as she walked across the tarmac toward the barracks, she saw a group of new recruits clustered outside the hangar, waiting for their orientation. They parted as she passed, their eyes bright with curiosity, and something more. Admiration. A young woman in crisp fatigue stepped forward, nervous. "Excuse me, Sergeant Torres? Is it true you took down 4 hostiles on your own?" Mia smiled, feeling the pride ripple through her like sunlight. "Not on my own. There were a lot of brave people last night. But yeah, I did what needed to be done." The recruit grinned, awe on her face. "I want to be just like you." Mia knelt, her voice gentle. "Don't be like me. Be better. And never let anyone tell you what your job is. You decide that." The words settled between them, soft but unbreakable. That evening, Mia found herself alone at the edge of the runway, the desert wind tugging at her hair. She watched the sun bleed gold across the sky, watched the jets, her jets, lined up and ready for flight. She thought about everything she'd endured, the doubts, the insults, the endless fight for respect. She thought about how close she'd come to quitting, to letting them win. But she hadn't. She'd stayed. She'd fought. And she'd saved them all. Behind her, the base pulsed with new energy. Things would never be the same. The old rules had changed. A new standard had been set, not just for Mia but for everyone who'd ever been told to step aside. Mia closed her eyes, letting the pride and exhaustion mingle. She was still herself, tough, stubborn, imperfect. But now she was more than just a mechanic or a woman or even a hero. She was a leader. As the first jet roared to life and took to the sky, Mia stood tall, watching its silhouette shrink into the endless blue. She smiled, her spirit fierce and unbroken. And somewhere deep inside she knew, no matter what the next battle brought, she was ready.